co-founder of Unity, Charles Fillmore, says having an attitude of gratitude announces the realization that we are in heaven. And I love the way he frames that. So when I'm in my gratitude space, I can look around at the relationships, the people, the place I'm in, and I can say, yeah, the heavenly experience is here now. Breathe. Yes, Roderick. Thank you. I'm glad I did put this in my pocket. I was wondering. Spirit told me, yes, take it. You might leak today. Oh, wow. How beautiful. Did you feel that? Words, lyrics, the power of the ministry of your voice. Oh my gosh. Filling in space right now while I get centered again. So good to be back with you. Thank you, Ellen, for the beautiful and whimsical introduction. You know, y'all have gotten used to Reverend Cynthia, who's a dear partner of mine. We've worked together for so long, and I know she has that dance poise when she walks that she's talked about before. I'm a different kind of dancer. It's not quite the same poise. Little Latin ballroom style, so it'll be a little bit different stance. Oh my gosh, we all have collectively been in such a, we'll call it the transition, and we keep thinking, and when does it end? When do we get to the point to where we exhale? And I want to invite you in that moment, especially after Rise Up, Andra Day. Oh my gosh, beautiful words and lyrics. To exhale with me. We sometimes tell each other to breathe, but the power of the exhale is so important. I release, I let go, I release, I let go. This beautiful book that, how many of you are going through the book series with Let Your Life Speak? Quite a few. Powerful book. I love Parker Palmer. When Reverend Cynthia reached out and she said, this is part of a series we're doing, I'm like, I love Parker. But I especially love any book that's that thick. But you know, it's those little ones that are powerful, right? Deep dive. Hadn't seen it in years, and I was talking to Cynthia the other day, and I said, wow, you could just spend days and months in just one chapter. And this chapter kind of connects with chapter 3, when the way closes, when things come to an end, when that door closes. And I want to share with you a little bit of let me readjust my orientation here. A little bit of a story. You may have heard variations of this before, but it's about a village, a community. Just picture this. It's the community that is all about the farmer's market. Everything they do is about the fruits and the vegetables and the jams and the jellies and the pies and the nuts. And all seasons, people are going all seasons. Communities from around go to this place because that's what they're about. That's how they keep themselves going. And then a season of no rain came and a drought. And the ground became dry and crusty and dusty. People had to move out because this was their livelihood. A lot of people stayed. Outside community stopped coming in as much because there was nothing there. So anxiety would rise. People were getting a little desperate and worried and fearful. And they were doing the variations of what they could do to say, what are we going to do? The bigger concern was after a year, they were concerned that they couldn't fertilize because there was still no moisture. Everything was so dusty. How were we going to prepare for the next season? Because it was this ripple effect. And so a few people got together and they said, what if we gathered in the town square and we just prayed for rain? Well, several people in their communities had been praying for rain. They're like, well, we do that. But what if we as a whole community got together in the town and prayed for rain? Couldn't hurt. So they coordinated, got together, and several hundred people gathered in the middle of this town. And as they formed kind of a circle, as they gathered around, this one little boy walks to the center and he's carrying his umbrella. And somebody said, why are you carrying an umbrella? It hasn't rained. Somebody else said, does he not realize we're praying for rain? And he heard that and he stepped forward and he opened that umbrella and he said, but it will. This is our unity philosophy in that story right there. We get lost in the story and the narrative of what's going on, but we declare and we know on the other side of whatever the narrative, whatever the story is, the beautiful, most brilliant blessing is there for us. Now, we get lost in our calendars and when's it going to end and the to-do list and our strategies in the mind and our sense consciousness. But when we shift it down to the heart and we go into principle, we go into affirmative prayer, we go into building that faith muscle, we can know, yes, it is brilliant on the other side of whatever scenario, whatever story we go through individually, collectively. I work with faith-based communities across the country. There's a lot of sometimes division going on because things are changing, anxiety rises, and that's what happens when we try to figure it out. In our communities, in our nation, we see this. But on the other side of this story, this temporary story, is a brilliant outcome. Yes? Any amens to that? Yeah. When one door closes, another door opens. How many times have you heard it? You've shared it. It's a very optimistic approach, and sure, we know that endings lead to new beginnings, new wisdom, new insight. And for me, the rich curriculum, the lessons are in the space between. That door has closed, that scenario, that story, that relationship, whatever that is closed. And in Parker Palmer's book, he talks about that in chapter 3 a lot. It's closed. So we want to start looking at this opening. Sometimes it's maybe the window we want to climb through on the other side. But there's a space between that's where the rich curriculum resides, if we're willing to walk through it, to partner, to join, to go through the ups, the downs, feel the feelings, and navigate it until this brilliant light begins to shine again. And for some, it takes a while. We often feel uneasy. Have you been in that space between in a relationship or a job or some storyline, and you don't have to show your hands because it would be everyone, where it's been this uncomfortable, anxious space where I don't know what's next? I think collectively we've gone through this for the last few years, all of us, like when, what, how do I kind of merge back into life, the life I knew? It's different. And in many ways it's gone. And I want to say gone sometimes for the good, because there's something that we're learning. Yes? I know I've learned a lot. 2023, for me, I just want to give you context, a little story here, was, I want to call a devastating year. As 2022 was closing, being a writer, I had my manuscripts and my journals, about 16 years worth, on the shelf, being busy and active. You kind of put those things off, they collect dust. And my intention was to begin the new year with working on my Journey Through Grief book. That's how ministry was called to me. That's how I began ministry, is through pastoral care. I had the personal experience many years ago of losing my mom and my only 2 siblings within a 43-month period. And so it gave me a deep lesson to learn to navigate that. But also it was a call to work with ministries navigating loss, working with so many people in personal loss, but also change and transition, which is ongoing. I teach a course at Unity Worldwide Spiritual Institute for the last 7 years about discerning your purpose. And every student at every time in the purpose class navigates the grief story, something that they've let go of to embrace something new. So it was powerful for me, and as I was pulling it off the shelf, I was affirming that I'm going to do something with this, because on my hard drive and my computer is not serving anyone, right? Just therapeutic exercise for me. And in that first week, my dad made a sudden transition. Sudden. Having a mom and dad and 2 siblings, my now family of origin was all gone. And for those of you that know that, that's a different kind of feeling. And while there was no warning sign, it was the first time I had gone through that suddenness. And I stood there and I thought, I know grief. I know it well. I've taught it. I've workshopped it. I've studied theory, human condition, mom, brother, sister. But that's the false claim. We don't know it until we're in it in that particular moment, at that particular time in our life, with that relationship and that family system at that moment. So while I thought in the beginning, and the shock was, I know how to navigate this. I have a toolbox. But boy, I needed more tools. Is that making sense for you? Yeah, we've all walked through that. And so what I began to realize is to become the observer in my story, which is a very helpful exercise. Navigate the problems and the reactions and the responses, the estate and the relocation. We were selling our home at the same time and relocating, and it was just all upheaval. And what came through the year was the journaling and the exercises, continuing to do that and watching myself in the story. I was saying no to a lot of service opportunities with ministries. I was saying, no, I'm doing some work. No, I'm doing some work. And what came to the top, if I were going to title that, it would be called Shattered Yet Rising. And I almost named today's talk that, but I thought people might not show up if they hear that. It sounds too heavy. So I switched it to Open Door Possibility, because it's like, maybe it's not so heavy. So I'm sneaking it in there. In Parker Palmer's book, Let Your Life Speak, deep. If you're not doing the book study, I recommend picking it up and just taking a look. He writes, as often happens on the spiritual journey, we arrived at the heart of paradox. Each time a door closes, the rest of the world opens up. And while he's referring to a close connection of purpose and vocation, as we know, vocation is the call, the voice, I believe there's a message here of the ebb and flow of life that's always there for us. The obstacles that become stepping stones, the relationships that end. And while, yes, the loss of my dad is right at a year ago, this journey has been heavy. Yet when you step back from something and you look back in retrospect, you get to see some of the blessings that occurred along the way. It honors the life, but it also recognizes the gifts in that curriculum. Would you agree? You've seen that. Each one of you know that. What I realized, and Parker Palmer talks about this, is be mindful of the hidden curriculum. Be open to the possibilities in all of it. Be open to the hidden teacher, those lessons that show up during our journeys. And for me, grief rose up as the teacher to look at again. Again, I thought I knew it. Our mind can become really busy. As I said before, we want to put strategies in place. We want to say, when will this end? When will this storyline end? When will this particular time in our lives? Sometimes it's the life of a community. When will this piece end so we can get on with it? Have you ever thought that before? Get on to the next thing. Yet we're in it. We're in the curriculum. And that's so rich to pay attention to. So what emerged was so many possibilities to explore as I began working on this book. And as you can imagine, journaling and looking at the storylines from my mom, my brother, my sister, now my dad, the personal experience, the raw grief. I almost wanted to edit some of it because I was doing it from journals. And I thought, no, let it be right where it is, because it's going to be the teacher for someone else. So I thought, this is really heavy. And as Troy and I, as Ellen mentioned, my collaborator for 25 years, we decided to start working on the nature aspect of where the messages are, the lake, the forest, the creatures of the forest, those beautiful places where, for me, I really feel and hear God when I'm in the stillness and in the silence. So we took a sabbatical to a lake. Didn't really have any contact with human beings for quite a bit. But the stillness of the lake, the trees and the wind and the bulbs and the grass and the things that were flowing inspired a new work. I love to take photos, so I took photos of all the things that I would witness. And Troy then began to design it with the words I was writing. He's an art director and designer, so the beauty is him. The writing then is me with spirit. And look what emerged through this year of what I called Shattered Yet Rising. Something beautiful. We get to see the proof on Monday. I'm so excited about seeing what that looks like. The liminal space, the space of ambiguity, is filled with an uneasiness. And I know it's heavy. I know it can be heavy, and we do want to move past it. We want to move on with it, because who wants to do the heavy stuff? And I'll bet there's so many people here that know when they've gone through something really heavy, they've come out the other side going, wow, that was hard while I was in it, but I look back on it, maybe a relationship or a vocation or something that they're like, wow, that was the best thing. Have you ever said that before? That was the best thing that ever happened, but I didn't know it when I was in it? How beautiful. And I think so many of our communities are doing that right now. And people often ask me, as Ellen mentioned, as a coach, as a transitional minister and working with people, how do you maintain a sense of gratitude in the midst of the heaviness? That's a hard one. But I see gratitude as a practice in all things, all the time. There is something to be grateful for at every moment. When Tim began to open in prayer the things that he named as far as gratitude, we can find gratitude in all things. And when we begin to either journal or have an app about it, they begin to show up, and those hidden teachers show up, those little musings show up, those messages. Sometimes it might be a bumper sticker going by, and you're like, huh, that really gave me a point of ease and grace in this moment. I'll often say, look for the hidden teachers in the storyline. Express gratitude. Embrace those detours, those doggone detours, those paths that just take us all over the place. Be mindful of it. Co-founder of Unity, Charles Fillmore. Any Charles Fillmore fans here? Says, having an attitude of gratitude announces the realization that we are in heaven. And I love the way he frames that. So when I'm in my gratitude space, I can look around at the relationships, the people, the place I'm in, and I can say, yeah, the heavenly experience is here now. This community is that experience when we are in gratitude. Palmer's book, he writes, when way closes behind us, those storylines, that narrative, that door that closes, he says it's tempting to regard it as a result of some strategic error. Had I been smarter, stronger, that door would not have slammed shut. So he says this, so if I redouble my efforts, I may be able to batter it down. You don't have to raise your hands on that one. Never wanted to just, that's where I'm supposed to be. Get through that door. That's where I'm supposed to go. But he says the most brilliant thing there. He's like, that door is also a guide. Turn around. The world is opened up. Everything is open. There's so many vast possibilities if we just turn around. But we get hyper-focused on that door, that story, that experience that I need to be in. Palmer's book overall theme for me is transformation. It's the transformation journey. And I see, as I work with so many of our ministries in faith-based communities across the country, that we are a hub for transformation. And when I looked before I got here, I looked at the mission statement for Unity Church of the Hills, where it says, together, we put God first, celebrate life, serve truth, and empower people to transform their lives. So if we truly look at that, we have to ask ourselves, moment to moment, we all go through stuff. How am I doing with that? How are we doing with that? Empower people to transform their lives. Lord knows my life has been transformed in a Unity community. I mean, I'm an ordained minister. I'm a reverend now. So obviously there was some transformation going on, right? The paradox. And Jesus also reminds us, where your treasure is, there will be your heart. So notice those places where your heart is alive. That's the blessing. That's the treasure. Palmer says, each time a door closes and the rest of the world opens up, stop pounding on the door and see the vastness of possibility. Our beloved Myrtle Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, she's with me all the time. She's one of my wisdom teachers. I'm just curious, how many Myrtle Fillmore folks, fans are here? Love Charles. Myrtle's my girl. She says it like this so brilliantly. All of us, sooner or later, come to a place in our soul's progress where we don't at first know just what's going on. We may become dissatisfied and restless. We may go through experiences which we don't understand. She says we may even be tempted to think that our good is gone from us. And then I can just imagine a sweet smile from Myrtle Fillmore. She says, but just as surely as there is God, the one presence, one power, I'll say that again, you know that statement, God, the one presence and one power, we find that we are going from one room, as it were, into another larger, lighter room. Do you see that expansion? Do you see that lifted up on the other side of whatever seemingly storm or drought, as in the beginning story was about? Larger and lighter room, a growing consciousness of love. Thank you all for the openness for me to be here, and Reverend Cynthia for the invitation to come back. I've missed you. And I want to share something with you right now, online, joining at a recorded time later here in the sanctuary. Hear this, that you matter. Every one of you matter. You are sacred. If you haven't thought about it lately, just know that you are sacred. Your purpose here is mighty. And if you haven't heard it today, and some people haven't heard it lately, I want you to hear it right now. You, trying to see every eye, even those that are asleep, I want to see your eyes. Just kidding. Hear this. You are loved. Hands over your hearts. Say to yourself silently or loud, I am loved. Yes, you are. Thank you so much. God bless you all.
So, 29 gifts. February is our month of giving, and as I spoke with Reverend Cynthia last week, I said, Reverend Cynthia, it's great that we're doing this, but the key is to do it with an abundant heart. And she said, I'll give you the gift of the announcement. So I'm here today to say, please participate. You can start anytime. There's nothing magic about February 1st, except if there is for you. And for me, there was. And I'm going to read what I wrote in my journal and how it grounded and centered me. Today, I give my colleague Christine the gift of political cover at work. She doesn't need it, but I'm giving it to her. A new senior colleague on her team replied with a rambling request that I interpreted to be unclear and possibly a large amount of unnecessary work. To top it off, Christine was feeling bad with a fever. We talked for a few minutes, and I agreed to reply all, set up a meeting, and help train the colleague. I was the one who pushed back, which gave her room to shine by jumping in and doing the concrete tasks once they were defined. A simple gift, didn't take much time, but it's the energy that mattered. And that energy from me was, I'm doing this for you, Christine. So I hope that you understand that and just give. I know so many of us give in so many ways every single day, but if you take a moment to journal and feel it in your heart, then you will be proceeding through the 29 gifts towards an abundant life change.
Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I circulate, and I am grateful.